What if you discovered that heaven operates the most advanced healing and protection system in the universe, and you've been carrying the access codes in your Bible all along? Hidden within ancient psalms are supernatural protocols that create impenetrable shields around your life while simultaneously healing every disease ravaging your body. These aren't just beautiful prayers for comfort. They're military-grade spiritual weapons that have been protecting God's people from plagues, accidents, and terminal illnesses for thousands of years. While others live in fear of sickness and danger, you could be walking in supernatural immunity that makes you untouchable by disease and invincible against harm. Every day you delay activating these divine protection systems, you remain vulnerable to threats that have no power over those who know heaven's secret codes. The choice is yours. Continue living defensively against sickness and danger, or discover the offensive spiritual weapons that make you more than a conqueror in every battle. Psalm 91 operates as heaven's most advanced protection system, creating an invisible shield around your life that repels every form of danger while simultaneously healing your body from within. When you declare, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty," you're not just claiming temporary protection, you're establishing permanent residence in a spiritual fortress where disease cannot penetrate and danger cannot reach. The Hebrew word sether for secret place means a hiding spot so secure that enemies cannot find you, while tsel for shadow indicates being covered by God's presence so completely that you're invisible to hostile forces. This isn't passive hiding, it's active protection that makes you untouchable by sickness, accidents, and spiritual attacks, while healing flows continuously through your body. The comprehensive protection promised in verses 5 through 6. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday, covers every type of health threat and danger you might face. Terror by night represents the fear and anxiety that weaken your immune system and create vulnerability to disease. The arrow by day symbolizes sudden health crises and unexpected accidents that seem to come from nowhere. Pestilence represents infectious diseases, pandemics, and contagious conditions that devastate communities. Destruction that wastes at noonday includes degenerative diseases, chronic conditions, and the slow deterioration that accompanies aging. When you consistently confess these promises, you're building a supernatural immune system that operates beyond natural defenses. The statistical impossibility described in verse 7, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee, reveals that God's protection creates a zone of safety around you even when everyone else is experiencing sickness and calamity. This promise has been proven throughout history as believers who lived in Psalm 91 remained healthy during plagues that killed thousands, survived accidents that should have been fatal, and experienced supernatural protection that defied natural odds. The mathematical precision of this promise indicates that your protection isn't random luck. It's divine intervention that operates according to spiritual laws that override natural probabilities. The angelic protection detailed in verses 11 to 12, "For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone," assigns supernatural beings to your personal security detail who work around the clock to maintain your health and safety. These angels aren't just protecting you from major disasters, they're preventing minor accidents that could lead to major problems, neutralizing toxins before they damage your system, and maintaining optimal function in every organ and system of your body. The phrase, "in all thy ways," means this protection operates in every area of your life, at home, at work, while traveling, during sleep, and in every situation you encounter. The authority promised in verse 13, "Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet," transforms you from potential victim to victorious warrior who has dominion over every threat to your health and safety. Lions represent aggressive diseases like cancer. Adders symbolize subtle conditions that slowly poison your system. Young lions indicate new health challenges, and dragons represent ancient generational patterns of sickness and danger. When you confess this verse with authority, you're not just asking for protection, you're taking dominion over your health and circumstances as God intended. This transforms your prayer life from defensive pleading to offensive conquest that actively defeats threats before they can manifest. The ultimate promise of longevity and satisfaction in verse 16, "With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation," guarantees not just protection and healing, but a long, fulfilling life filled with purpose and divine revelation. The Hebrew word for satisfy means to fill to overflowing, indicating that your extended life will be rich with meaning, accomplishment, and spiritual fulfillment rather than merely existing for many years. The showing of salvation includes ongoing revelations of God's power, continuous experiences of His deliverance, and constant demonstrations of His faithfulness that make your life a living testimony of divine protection and healing that encourages others to seek the same covering you've discovered. Psalm 103 functions as heaven's ultimate immune system enhancement protocol, not only healing existing diseases, but creating supernatural resistance to future illness while restoring your body to optimal function. The opening command, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless His holy name," engages every cell, organ, and system in your body in active worship that creates perfect harmony between your spirit, soul, and physical body. This internal alignment is crucial because disease often results from discord between different aspects of your being, and when everything within you blesses God simultaneously, healing accelerates exponentially. The Hebrew word for bless means to kneel in grateful acknowledgement, indicating that humility and gratitude create the ideal environment for both healing and protection to flourish. The forgiveness-healing connection revealed in verse 3, "Who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases," establishes that spiritual cleansing and physical restoration are inseparably linked in God's healing system. Many chronic illnesses have roots in unforgiveness, guilt, shame, or spiritual toxicity that must be cleansed before complete healing can occur. When you consistently confess this verse, you're not just claiming physical healing, you're accessing spiritual detoxification that removes the emotional and spiritual toxins that weaken your immune system and create vulnerability to disease. The word all eliminates exceptions, meaning every sin can be forgiven and every disease can be healed when you approach God with genuine faith and repentance. The life redemption promise in verse 4, "Who redeemeth thy life from destruction, who crowneth thee with loving kindness and tender mercies," reveals that God's healing power includes protection from the downward spiral of degenerative disease and the restoration of dignity that illness often steals. Destruction in Hebrew means shachath, which refers to the pit or corruption that seeks to claim your life through disease and decay. When you confess this redemption, you're claiming divine intervention that stops disease progression, reverses cellular damage, and restores your body to its intended function. The crown of loving kindness indicates that you're treated with royal dignity throughout your healing journey, never as a victim, but always as a beloved child of the King. The youth renewal promise in verse 5, "Who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles," reveals God's intention to not just heal you, but to restore vitality and strength that may have been lost through illness, aging, or life's challenges. Eagles are known for their remarkable ability to renew their feathers, talons, and beaks throughout their lives, actually becoming stronger with age rather than weaker. When you consistently confess this promise, you're claiming supernatural rejuvenation that makes your latter years more vibrant than your earlier ones. This renewal includes not just physical restoration, but mental clarity, emotional stability, and spiritual vitality that create comprehensive wellness. The mercy and compassion principles described in verses 8 through 14 reveal that God's healing and protection flow from His loving nature rather than from your perfect performance or flawless faith. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and plenteous in mercy, means that even when you struggle with doubt, make mistakes, or experience setbacks in your healing journey, God's commitment to your restoration remains unchanged. This understanding eliminates the stress and self-condemnation that often hinder healing and replaces them with peaceful confidence in God's unchanging love. The knowledge that God remembers your frame and knows your dust creates compassionate space for imperfect faith while maintaining expectation for perfect healing. The generational protection and blessing principle in verses 17 to 18, "But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear Him, and His righteousness unto children's children," establishes that your healing and protection create a spiritual covering for your entire family line. When you consistently live in the reality of Psalm 103, you're not just affecting your own health and safety, You're establishing a covenant of divine protection that extends to your children and grandchildren. This generational impact means your faith today creates a spiritual inheritance of health and protection that will benefit family members for generations to come, making your healing journey an investment in your family's future wellness and security. Psalm 121 operates as heaven's emergency response system, providing immediate divine intervention when danger threatens and instant healing when crisis strikes. The opening question, "I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help," represents the natural human tendency to look to earthly sources for assistance during emergencies, but the answer, "My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth," redirects your expectation to the unlimited power of your Creator. When you consistently confess this truth, you're programming your mind to automatically turn to divine resources first, rather than panicking or relying solely on human assistance. This mental shift is crucial because your initial response to crisis determines whether you access supernatural intervention or struggle with only natural resources. The sleepless guardian promise in verses 3 to 4, "He will not suffer thy foot to be moved, he that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep," establishes that divine protection operates continuously without interruption, fatigue, or distraction. Unlike human caregivers who need rest, God's protection system never goes offline, never takes breaks, and never misses potential threats to your health and safety. This 24/7 monitoring includes protection during sleep when you're most vulnerable, divine intervention during medical procedures when you're unconscious, and supernatural supervision during emergencies when you cannot protect yourself. The Hebrew word shamar for keeping means to guard, watch, and preserve with constant vigilance that anticipates and prevents problems before they develop. The shade and protection imagery in verses 5 through 6, "The Lord is thy keeper, the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night," reveals comprehensive protection that covers every environmental threat to your health and well-being. The right hand represents your place of strength and activity, where God's protective presence guards your most vulnerable areas. The sun's smiting represents environmental hazards, radiation exposure, and harmful influences that damage health during conscious hours. The moon's night influence includes the spiritual attacks, subconscious fears, and physiological vulnerabilities that increase during sleep and darkness. This promise creates supernatural protection from both visible and invisible threats that seek to compromise your health. The preservation promise in verse 7, "The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil, he shall preserve thy soul," establishes that God's protection includes not just physical safety, but spiritual, emotional, and psychological preservation that maintains your complete well-being. The Hebrew word for evil, ra, encompasses every form of harm including disease, accident, violence, and spiritual attack. Preserving your soul includes protecting your mind from trauma, your emotions from devastation, and your spirit from contamination that could create vulnerability to future problems. This comprehensive preservation ensures that you emerge from crisis situations not just physically intact, but emotionally stable and spiritually strengthened. The going out and coming in protection detailed in verse 8, "The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore," covers every transition, journey, and movement in your life with divine security that extends throughout your entire lifetime. Going out represents leaving places of safety and comfort to engage with potentially dangerous situations, while coming in represents returning to places of rest and security. This protection operates whether you're traveling, working, exercising, or simply moving through daily activities. The phrase, "from this time forth and even forevermore," establishes that once you claim this protection, it remains active for the rest of your life and beyond, creating a permanent covering that cannot be revoked or diminished. The community aspect of Psalm 121 reveals that when you consistently live under this protection, you become a source of safety and security for others who enter your sphere of influence. Your protected presence creates a zone of divine safety that extends to family members, friends, and even strangers who come into contact with you. This multiplication of protection means that your faith in God's keeping power doesn't just benefit you, it creates a ripple effect of divine safety that protects entire communities and demonstrates God's protective power to those who may not yet know Him personally. Your testimony of supernatural protection becomes a catalyst for others to seek the same divine covering for their own lives. Psalm 30 functions as heaven's premier healing laboratory, where impossible medical cases are transformed into testimonies of divine power and complete restoration. David's declaration, "O Lord my God, I cried unto thee, and thou hast healed me," establishes the fundamental principle that desperate prayer creates direct access to supernatural healing power that can override any medical diagnosis or prognosis. The Hebrew word rapha for healing means to mend, cure, and restore to perfect health, indicating that God's healing doesn't just manage symptoms, it eliminates root causes and returns your body to its original design. This laboratory setting implies that your healing process may involve divine experimentation with treatments that medical science hasn't discovered, supernatural interventions that doctors cannot explain, and recovery protocols that exceed human understanding. The resurrection testimony in verse 3, "O Lord, thou hast brought up my soul from the grave, thou hast kept me alive, that I should not go down to the pit," reveals that God's healing power extends to the most hopeless situations where medical professionals have given up and death seems inevitable. The grave represents any condition where hope has died, where treatment options are exhausted, and where natural recovery appears impossible. The pit symbolizes the downward progression of terminal illness, degenerative disease, and systematic organ failure. When you confess this testimony as your own current reality, rather than just David's historical experience, you're claiming resurrection power that can reverse any death process and restore life to dying cells, organs, and systems. The timing principle revealed in verse 5, "For his anger endureth but a moment, in his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning," provides hope for those enduring prolonged illness or extended healing processes. Even when God's discipline or testing is involved in your health challenge, his displeasure is temporary while his favor is permanent. The night season represents the darkest moments of your healing journey when pain is intense, progress seems non-existent, and hope feels lost. But this promise guarantees that breakthrough morning will come, bringing joy that transforms your weeping into worship and your valley into victory. The morning represents sudden turnaround, unexpected healing, and miraculous restoration that vindicates your faith. The transformation promise in verse 11, "Thou hast turned for me my mourning into dancing, thou hast put off my sackcloth and girded me with gladness," reveals that God's healing includes complete emotional and spiritual restoration that exceeds your condition before illness occurred. Mourning represents the grief that accompanies health loss. Sackcloth symbolizes the shame and despair that often follow chronic illness, but God's intervention creates dancing that celebrates not just recovery, but renewal. The girding with gladness indicates being equipped with supernatural joy that becomes your strength throughout the healing process and your testimony afterward. This emotional healing is often as important as physical restoration because many people's bodies heal while their spirits remain wounded. The purpose revelation in verse 12, "To the end that my glory may sing praise to thee, and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks unto thee forever," establishes that your healing story is designed to bring eternal glory to God and hope to others facing similar battles. Your restored health becomes a living song that declares God's faithfulness to everyone you encounter. The silence of sickness is replaced by the testimony of healing that continues throughout your lifetime, encouraging others to believe for their own breakthrough. This purpose understanding transforms your healing from personal blessing to public ministry that multiplies God's healing power in the lives of others who hear your testimony. The memorial aspect of Psalm 30 creates a permanent record of God's healing intervention that strengthens your faith for future health challenges and provides ammunition against doubt when symptoms try to return. Like the stones of remembrance that Joshua erected after crossing the Jordan, your healing testimony becomes a spiritual monument that destroys fear and builds confidence whenever health concerns arise. This memorial function means that your current healing crisis becomes the foundation for greater faith that enables you to pray for others with authority born from personal experience of God's miraculous intervention in impossible medical situations. Psalm 34 operates as heaven's specialized trauma recovery center, designed specifically for those whose health has been damaged by life's most devastating experiences: abuse, violence, betrayal, loss, and other traumatic events that create both physical and emotional wounds requiring supernatural intervention. David's testimony, "I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and delivered me from all my fears," establishes that divine healing begins with the elimination of fear, which is often the root cause of many physical symptoms and chronic conditions. The Hebrew word natsal for delivered means to be snatched away from danger, plucked out of harm's way, indicating that God's intervention removes you from the source of trauma and its ongoing effects on your health. The comprehensive deliverance promise in verse 4, combined with the angelic protection detailed in verse 7, "The angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them," reveals that trauma survivors receive specialized spiritual security that prevents re-traumatization while healing occurs. The encampment imagery indicates a military-style protection that surrounds you with supernatural forces dedicated to your safety and recovery. This angelic protection includes shielding you from triggers that could cause regression, providing supernatural peace during therapy and treatment, and creating safe spaces where deep healing can occur without fear of further harm. The deliverance includes not just rescue from current trauma effects, but prevention of future traumatic experiences. The taste and see invitation in verse 8, "O taste and see that the Lord is good, blessed is the man that trusteth in him," provides a gentle pathway for trauma survivors to rebuild their capacity for trust and intimacy that may have been destroyed by painful experiences. Trauma often creates an inability to trust anyone, including God, but this verse invites careful, experimental engagement rather than demanding immediate faith. The tasting implies small, safe steps toward experiencing God's goodness, while seeing represents the gradual recognition of His faithfulness through personal experience. This process respects the damaged trust capacity of trauma survivors while providing opportunities for healing relationship with the ultimate source of restoration. The broken heart healing promise in verse 18, "The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit," specifically addresses the emotional devastation that accompanies trauma and its physical manifestations in the body. Broken hearts aren't just emotional conditions, they create real physical symptoms, including chest pain, breathing difficulties, immune system depression, and neurological dysfunction. The nearness of God to the broken-hearted means that His healing presence is most concentrated in the places where hurt is deepest. The contrite spirit represents the humbling that trauma often brings, but God's response is salvation that includes emotional, spiritual, and physical restoration of everything that was damaged or destroyed. The bone restoration promise in verse 20, "He keepeth all his bones, not one of them is broken," has profound implications for trauma recovery because many trauma survivors experience chronic pain, joint problems, and structural damage that medical science cannot fully explain or effectively treat. Trauma literally gets stored in the body's tissues, creating ongoing physical symptoms long after the traumatic event has ended. This promise extends beyond physical bone protection to include the structural restoration of your entire being, rebuilding confidence, restoring identity, renewing hope, and reconstructing the fundamental sense of safety that trauma destroys. The righteous protection and evil consequence principles throughout Psalm 34 reveal that trauma survivors who align themselves with God's ways receive supernatural protection from future harm while witnessing the ultimate justice that prevents their abusers from escaping accountability. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all, acknowledges that trauma survivors may face ongoing challenges during recovery, but guarantees divine intervention in every situation. The promise that evil shall slay the wicked provides comfort to those seeking justice while removing the burden of revenge from trauma survivors, allowing them to focus on healing rather than retribution. This comprehensive recovery system ensures that trauma survivors not only heal, but become powerful testimonies of God's ability to restore what seemed permanently destroyed. Psalm 41 functions as heaven's intensive care unit, providing specialized protection and healing protocols for those in the most critical and vulnerable stages of illness, where life hangs in the balance and every moment counts. The opening principle, "Blessed is he that considereth the poor, the Lord will deliver him in time of trouble," establishes that compassion shown to others in their weakness creates a spiritual insurance policy that activates divine protection when you face your own health crises. The Hebrew word for considereth means to be intelligent about, to give wise attention to, indicating that caring for others' needs isn't just kindness, It's strategic spiritual investment that pays dividends when you need divine intervention most desperately. The life preservation promise in verse 2, "The Lord will preserve him and keep him alive, and he shall be blessed upon the earth, and thou wilt not deliver him unto the will of his enemies," provides supernatural life support that maintains vital functions even when medical equipment fails and doctors exhaust their options. The word preserve means to guard and protect life force itself, while keep alive involves active divine intervention that sustains life beyond natural capacity. This promise is particularly powerful for those facing life-threatening surgeries, critical medical procedures, or conditions where survival rates are low. The protection from enemies includes not just spiritual forces, but also medical complications, human errors, and mechanical failures that could threaten your recovery. The healing bed ministry described in verse 3, "The Lord will strengthen him upon the bed of languishing, thou wilt make all his bed in his sickness," reveals God's personal care for those confined to hospital beds, recovery rooms, and extended care facilities. The strengthening that occurs isn't just physical, it includes emotional fortification that prevents depression, mental clarity that enables wise medical decisions, and spiritual peace that facilitates healing. The phrase, "make all his bed," means transforming the place of sickness into a sanctuary of restoration, turning hospital rooms into healing chambers where God's presence is tangibly experienced. This promise brings hope to those facing lengthy recoveries and comfort to family members keeping bedside vigils. The soul healing prayer in verse 4, "I said, Lord, be merciful unto me, heal my soul, for I have sinned against thee," addresses the spiritual and emotional dimensions of critical illness that often determine physical recovery outcomes. Many people in intensive care situations experience profound spiritual crisis, wondering if their condition is punishment for past sins or evidence of God's displeasure. This verse provides the pathway to spiritual healing that often must occur before physical restoration can be complete. The mercy requested includes not just forgiveness, but compassionate healing action that addresses guilt, shame, and spiritual wounds that may be hindering recovery. The enemy defeat declaration in verses 11 to 12, "By this I know that thou favourest me, because mine enemy doth not triumph over me. And as for me, thou upholdest me in mine integrity, and settest me before thy face for ever," provides the criteria for recognizing God's favour even during critical illness. The enemy not triumphing means that death, disease, and destruction will not have the final word in your health story. The upholding in integrity refers to God maintaining your wholeness and completeness despite attacks on your health. Being set before God's face forever indicates permanent access to divine healing presence that continues throughout your recovery and beyond. The betrayal and restoration theme throughout Psalm 41 acknowledges the painful reality that serious illness often reveals the true character of relationships, sometimes resulting in abandonment by trusted friends during your greatest need. However, the Psalm's conclusion promises that God's faithfulness more than compensates for human unfaithfulness, providing divine companionship that never wavers and supernatural support that never fails. The healing that occurs through Psalm 41 includes not just physical recovery, but restoration of faith in God's goodness, healing of relational wounds, and the development of spiritual maturity that transforms you into someone who brings comfort to others facing similar trials. This comprehensive protection and healing system ensures that you emerge from critical health situations not just physically restored, but spiritually strengthened and emotionally mature.